I would like to begin by welcoming you to the Maltese Islands. And while I augur you much constructive and successful work, I also hope that you will find some time to enjoy the beauty of our unique historical and cultural heritage. It is truly a pleasure and a privilege to address the 33rd session of the African, Caribbean, Pacific European Union Joint Parliamentary Assembly. Malta's historical and cultural legacy as a nation at the center of the Mediterranean Sea provides further impetus to create opportunities for dialogue and connection between different cultures and peoples. As an island at the crossroads of continents and civilizations, we know that in this world, no country or group of people can face the future alone. Indeed, Malta's ongoing presidency of the Council of the European Union is reinforcing our commitment to work for peace, prosperity, and the well-being of all societies. Our endeavors towards the building of peace, prosperity, and holistic well-being depend on our ability and our firm resolution to promote, to encourage, and to work to build a spirit of solidarity. For this reason, let me begin my remarks by commending the ACPEU Joint Parliamentary Assembly for its endeavors. This Joint Parliamentary Assembly is a unique institution which celebrates partnerships between diverse stakeholders from the global South and the global North. It is this focus on developing new opportunities for dialogue and friendship which inspires me, as I am sure it also inspires you, with confidence for the future. With this in mind, let me quote one of the greatest orators ever to live in our Mediterranean region, Cicero, who said, "Everything is alive, everything is interconnected." I encourage you to analyze these inspirational words, as I believe that when we fully appreciate the power of Cicero's philosophy, we will understand the need for an ongoing process of dialogue to commit ourselves to work to sustain our interconnectedness. We must recognize that our national and international authorities, our societies, and our communities are interconnected. They should be structured around the need to provide basic dignity and respect, and to work for the holistic well-being of all humanity. The truth is that in today's world, global economic interdependence is a fact. However, I believe that we must also understand and accept that our interconnections go far deeper than the economy. Whether we like it or not, these connections are active across the political, social, and ecological spheres of our countries and regions. Whoever we are, wherever we are positioned, and whatever we do, we are connected and affect each other as one humanity. Therefore, as this parliamentary session focuses on issues of migration, demographic growth, investment in Africa, and other pressing concerns, I urge you to always and in all ways keep this underlying reality foremost in your minds, that peace, prosperity, and the well-being of our human race and the world are interconnected. Sources of health development in one part of our economic, social, and ecological systems can have great benefits which affect our societies and our world. Likewise, injustice, discrimination, and oppression are thwarting global development in some parts of the world, and are also destabilizing our efforts to achieve the advancement of humanity as a whole. Promoting strategies to strengthen positive interdependence between our different communities and nations will need to increase the opportunities for all humanity. These include opportunities for knowledge sharing and investment, research and innovation, international protection and security, and person-to-person relationship building and friendship through education, trade, and tourism, just to mention a few. In this way, by nurturing a proper transformation to build and foster relationships and friendships among the peoples of our nations, we shall come closer to achieving practical changes that would be of particular benefit to the most vulnerable members of our communities and our societies at large. I must note, it is this objective that underlines the Cotonou Agreement, which prioritizes the eradication of poverty, achieving sustainable development, the inclusion of ACPEU countries into global economic networks, and promoting the rule of law and the enforcement of justice. It is essential that our national authorities, business communities, and civil society activists continue working in synergy to keep channels of political, economical, and social goodwill open. In doing so, we shall be helping to build sustainable peace by addressing the holistic well-being of our countries and our regions. We must endeavor relentlessly to keep these objectives high on the agenda of the international community. Moreover, these very same objectives are fully endorsed and supported by all the leaders of our nations through the United Nations Agenda 2030 and its Sustainable Development Goals. Agenda 2030 provides an effective framework and a practical action plan for the sustainable future of our nations and our world. Agenda 2030 acknowledges that the first and most important change which we must make is to create a more equitable and fair system for the distribution of wealth. For this reason, the first Sustainable Development Goal targets eradication of poverty. This is the most basic inequality which we must address in order to achieve a deep-rooted social, economic, political, cultural, and ecological transformation of our global situation. Sustainable Development Goal number 1 makes it clear that an end to poverty in all its manifestations is essential to achieve global progress in all sectors of life. Poverty crushes people's hopes and aspirations. Poverty demeans human dignity and perpetuates cycles of precarity, which many a time spins out of control and inflicts damaging consequences across multiple generations. Hence, we must take to heart the inspiring words of Nelson Mandela, who said, "Overcoming poverty is not a task of charity. It is an act of justice, like slavery and apartheid. Poverty is not natural. It is man-made, and it can be overcome and eradicated by the actions of human beings." End quote. There can be no peace and prosperity for humanity and our world if systematic injustices continue to be perpetuated through our political institutions and socio-economic structures. So long as a disproportionate share of the world's resources are not being enjoyed by all, there shall be no equitable distribution which translates into sustainable development for all humanity. I would like to take this opportunity at the beginning of this 33rd session of the African, Caribbean, Pacific and European Union Joint Parliamentary Assembly to urge you as policymakers and as the experts in your sectors to take action in a spirit of solidarity. We must remember that all of our nations are signatories to the United Nations Agenda 2030, and therefore we are all responsible to implement its goals and targets for immediate and far-reaching effects in the best interest of humankind. We cannot continue to drag our feet or to be complacent about the world situation. We must work across the borders of our nations to agree upon and to achieve a shared vision of solidarity, equity, and unity. I believe that the economic strengthening of our countries must be paralleled by increased attention to strategies which ensure sustainable improvements in everybody's daily life. We must conquer our fears and doubts. We must be courageous. We must put in our faith in a global social solidarity approach. We must continue to empower the partnerships which already exist among ACP and the EU nations. We must continue to reaffirm our commitment to universal human rights and fundamental freedoms, which we need to implement by taking effective action. Furthermore, we must prioritize the need for promoting sustainable, structured processes of democratic dialogue among the diverse cultural groups, social sectors, and communities of faith within our nations. Most of all, we must resist threats of division and self-interest wherever they occur by standing firm in our commitment to solidarity and peace. This responsibility to nurture mutually beneficial encounters between communities and countries must be at the heart of all our strategies and policies to ensure a successful future. Now is the time for us to stand together, shoulder to shoulder. Let me reiterate the importance of strengthening synergies among our national authorities, international institutions, and civil societies. Communities and governments must come together to improve communication among the various stakeholders that are active throughout our nations. This must be the approach to tackle urgent issues of injustices, inequalities, poverty, precarity, and conflict. We all know what needs to be done and how it is to be done. We must make a change on the ground by encouraging the proactive participation of all our citizens. Our citizens have the best understanding of the changes that need to take place within society to promote equity and social justice. Those within our societies who have direct experiences of poverty, exclusion, and discrimination are the best placed to influence and inform essential strategies and policies. I truly believe that much more must be done to support vulnerable communities and less developed countries. However, we must also create and sustain safe and respectful spaces where all people who have been pushed to the margins of society are welcomed as valued collaborators. I urge you as politicians and as policymakers to use your influence to ensure that the diverse voices of our peoples are heard by sharing and acting upon their concerns and aspirations. It is in this way that we can develop effective strategies and policies for full inclusion and equitable participation. It is only in this way that we will come closer towards creating the kind of world and the kind of legacy that we want to pass down to our children and all future generations. I augur that the collaborations between African, Caribbean, and Pacific countries and the European Union will guide us towards this potential legacy of peace and prosperity. In this context, I would also like to commend the United Nations, UNIDO, and the German government for their initiative, which, as I am informed, will be launched today in Malta, entitled Global Africa. Global Africa will provide a powerful space for dialogue and collaboration by focusing on important issues of social, political, and economic development across Africa. Considering that a number of proactive initiatives have and are taking place, there is already a sense of momentum to place Africa high on the agendas of our nations and the agenda of the international community. In order to keep this momentum going and to create a meaningful improvement for the communities and societies in Africa, we must be willing to face some challenging realities which are blocking the full prosperity of the peoples of Africa. For example, there are alarming reports that more wealth is pouring out every year of the 48 countries which the World Bank classifies as sub-Saharan Africa than is actually being channeled in for development. I would like to share with you a very meaningful quote from the Honest Accounts 2017 report, which was compiled by a coalition of UK and African NGOs. The report says, research for this report calculates the movement of financial resources into and out of Africa and some key costs imposed on Africa by the rest of the world. The countries of Africa are collectively net creditors to the rest of the world, to the tune of $41.3 billion in 2015. Thus, much more wealth is leaving the world's most impoverished continent than is entering it, end quote. Commenting on this report, Aisha Dodwell, a campaigner for the NGO Global Justice Now, said, this research shows that what African countries really need is for the rest of the world to stop systematically looting them. While the form of colonial plunder may have changed over time, its basic nature remains unchanged, end quote. We definitely cannot allow a new rhetoric of investment and industrialization to continue perpetuating these underlying realities and tensions. Therefore, the most necessary investment I want us to see, my dear friends, is first and foremost an investment in the dignity of the peoples of Africa. The development that I aspire for the international community to achieve is the development of the social, economic, and political well-being of every individual, of every family, and of all communities in Africa. Although I cannot be present for the launch of Global Africa today, I am pleased that this morning I had the opportunity to share some of my ideas for effective and sustainable investment in Africa with the EU Commissioner for Humanitarian Aid and Crisis Management. I believe there is the need to invest our efforts in developing innovative strategies which touch the social, economic, political, and environmental realities experienced by each and every human being in the nations of Africa. Finally, I urge all of us to continue to strive together to ensure sustainable and meaningful change which promotes the dignity and the well-being of all peoples across our societies and nations for the benefit of both present and future generations. Thank you.